webinar series. Today's topic would be on S&OP. How can we do it with flexible planning? We have our presenter Ramesh Yelisetty with us. He has over 20 years of experience in the supply chain management suite, particularly focusing on the SAP technology suite. So we'll just wait for a minute for other participants to join, and we can start. Okay, Ramesh, we can start. All the participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to type them on the questions tab on your right side panel, and we would be more than happy to answer in the Q&A session. Ramesh, it's all yours.
Good morning, everybody. This is Ramesh. Thanks for your time for registering for this webinar on SNOP. This is going to be one of the series of webinars that we're going to come up with on the topic of supply chain planning. And we only thought that it was apt to start with sales and operations planning. I'll try to keep myself to about 30 minutes on the slides and use the other half of the time to give you a little bit of a look and feel of how flexible planning seems like. The idea over here is to present a proposition that for a majority of businesses who already have SAP, you don't have to wait. If you intend to build a robust sales and operations planning process, SAP ECC has the right tools, may not be the best or the most optimal of the tools, but it doesn't stop you from having a sales and operations planning process. And that's the theme that we're going to be presenting here. And as we would say, that it's just a stepping stone, it's just the first step. And once you start off with the flexible planning within ECC, ProSoft as a solution provider can give you an incremental organic path to upscale yourself from a technology perspective, and we would finally end up with presenting a typical solution roadmap to prove the fact that you can start here, nothing stops you from starting. At the same time, nothing stops you from moving forward, and everything that you do along the path, you will carry it forward. You'll carry it forward in incremental steps, and you would learn as you go, and that would be the solution roadmap that we'll be presenting. Feel free to note down your questions. Sean would have a final question and answer session, and we'll be more than happy to help. And I would also say that feel free to ask for additional sessions if you think this session is of value to you, and see how it goes. And once again, thanks everybody for joining this session, and we'll try to move on. This is a brief agenda of what I'm looking forward to, a brief overview of the SNOP process. I try to make it as brief as I can. You obviously can request a separate session focused entirely on the SNOP process. We can make it as exhaustive and as intensive that you may please. We could also do a week's worth of SNOP training workshop if you need so. But here, for the purpose of this exercise, before we jump into flexible planning, I only thought that it would be apt to run through a few slides to get everybody on the same page on the high-level process. Then we'll take a deep dive into flexible planning, and I'll finally also try to show you a typical solution roadmap which tells you that this is where you can start. Nothing stops you from starting here. ECC does have limitations, but it doesn't stop you from implementing a fairly robust SNOP process. At the same time, how far can it go from there, and how do we leverage on the learnings that we have? That is what the solution roadmap would be about. And finally, I had something of a ProSoft offerings that I've listed over there, but I wouldn't go into that. I don't want to make this a solution selling exercise. There are different media for that. You can get in touch with Sean, and he could send you more details of ProSoft's specific offering in this area, and also offerings across the solution roadmap that I would indicate. So feel free to ask Sean about what you might need in terms of the help that ProSoft can offer in this direction, but we would not go into that in this specific call. And finally, question and answers. Feel free to send your questions over to Sean. Try to answer as much as I can within the time that we have. If not, we can schedule a separate session for yourself. Now, understanding SNOP, how does it all come together? Basically, to put it in a very simple way, the purpose of SNOP is to have everybody focused on one given business plan and try to marry operational level tactical plans with the business plan. So if you look at the larger planning perspective, you have strategic planning, which typically might be anywhere between 2 years to 3 years to 5 years based on the industry that you operate on, and of course specific to a company itself. Then you translate that business plan, translate that strategic plan to a business plan, which could typically be between 1 to 2 years in quarterly buckets, if I would call it that way. And then you take the business plan and you figure out, how am I to get these numbers, and you translate that to an SNOP plan. For most businesses, SNOP plan is typically in monthly buckets, but there could be businesses where it might make sense in quarterly buckets. And then you would translate that to a weekly supply plan or a weekly SNOP plan. And typically, the weekly SNOP plan is towards driving teams at an operational level. So the tactical level and operational level get married at a weekly plan level, and you could drive the more detailed processes, be it sales execution, driving the sales force, and deployment of your inventory if you're in a typical make-to-stock kind of an environment, or a mix of make-to-stock as well as stocking assemblies, assemble-to-order kind of an environment. Then you do your master scheduling and your procurement planning, all that adding up to a given weekly planning cycle. Then, of course, you have the transactional processes that support these planning processes. I'll move on to the next slide. This is the typical supply chain framework that we at ProSoft are using as reference towards building our supply chain solutions. So we have solutions in each of these areas, but if you look at it closely, this isn't something that we have invented. This is the good old Apex MRP2 framework, if you would see deep down. So you start out with strategic planning, you've got an annual business plan, syncing up with the previous slide. You've got the sales and operations planning process driving the medium or the midterm planning processes such as master scheduling and MRP. So what we're trying to indicate over here is that when we talk to a lot of people in the industry or the client base, the pain points, issues are at a very local level. I mean, people have problems with detailed scheduling, maybe job shop scheduling or process scheduling, scheduling your packaging machines, wherever you might have a bottleneck, utilizing the mixer, optimizing on your setups, optimizing on your cleanups, all that stuff. But when you try to resolve those issues, more often than not, it turns out that the problem gets thrown across the aisle onto the next process, and to the next process, and to the next process. Sales and operations planning is one way of getting all these teams together so that once you decide upon a plan that's to be executed, they line up towards executing that process in a way that it's most beneficial to the company, and it optimizes the way that the resources have been committed. So if we tend to resolve each of these processes, we can operate on a certain domain where we can optimize those processes, but beyond a certain limit, those local optimals don't necessarily lead to a larger, holistic optimal performance. The best way to accomplish that is to decide upon a holistic, all-encompassing sales and operations plan and drive your operational, your tactical, operational, and execution to work within or around that sales and operations plan. Otherwise, it very quickly escalates to the point that everybody seems to have their best plan. No debate about how good the plan is, but unfortunately, all those plans or all those executional processes do not add up to what's actually expected of those plans. So this is our framework that we work towards, and our intention is to come out with focused webinars in each of these areas. And if you have a specific need, feel free to talk to Sean, and we will be more than happy to kind of orchestrate a focused session for you on any of these areas from our supply chain management practice. Going further, trying to create a keto kind of a model on supply chain that anybody must be able to understand. I try to orchestrate the supply chain processes, not complicating them in terms of a serious flow chart with back and forth arrows, but how best can I integrate the sales and operations planning process as well as supply chain execution in 10 steps. So this is basically what I have. Sean would be more than happy to send you this presentation and use this as a reference if you want, all the way from step 1 to step 10. If you see, you get your history. You take that history and you run intelligence on that history, identify outliers, representative, unrepresentative, clean up the data, get the history to a point that it's usable from a forecasting perspective. Get it onto the demand planning table. You may want to do SKU level forecast, or you may want to do a forecast at a higher level. Whatever be the level of hierarchy, as in your planning aggregation level, you could run your statistical forecast at that level, and that creates a forecast that you can evaluate. The demand planner can critique through it. He can get intelligence from the field force, or evaluate it, make overrides, and then move it over to supply planning, where you work through the numbers and do your rough cut capacity planning, check your inventories, identify risk, and come back with what you might call a constrained demand plan. And that constrained demand plan gets transferred from tactical planning towards execution onto the demand management side of SAP. I apologize that a good part of this terminology may be SAP specific. So if there is somebody who is not on SAP, I could explain that separately with them. But at this moment, I would keep popping SAP terminology such as the demand management and so. When it moves to demand management, it's ready for mass production scheduling, and you could do it at weekly or bi-weekly or daily buckets. And typically mass production scheduling happens in weekly buckets. And when you try to do mass production scheduling, you could also subject some variation to be responsive as you see the current orders popping in. whether it be buffer managed inventory or reorder point based inventories. You have quotations for anticipated orders. You've got sales orders coming up and such. And that could further change your MPS. But then if the MPS changes versus the supply plan, the overall aggregate supply plan that is there, you could also set up alert management framework that's available from SAP to show that up for the supply planner to take notice and take corrective action or get additional approvals or raise the flag and so on. And from the mass production schedule, of course, for execution, the line supervisors would probably work with the plant schedulers to come out with a detailed schedule by line, and you release the orders at that level and start executing. So in a nutshell, these 10 processes kind of summarize the whole move all the way from statistical forecasting to releasing the shop orders on the floor and getting them to execute. If you give me another 5 or 10 steps, I would take it to material procurement too, but at this moment I would like to stop at this. Again, when it comes to planning, obviously planning at a SNOP level based on what makes sense to the business would happen at various levels of hierarchy. If you typically look at businesses that are more like pharma, chemical, FMCG, CPG, whatever you might want to call, they seem to be very SKU focused, and the aggregation happens at a SKU level. So you could have a SKU, you could have a family of SKUs, call it a subfamily, and you could have a larger aggregation as a family, and if you would want, you could add additional level of aggregations on top of that. They could be your strategic business units or whatever. And from a distribution standpoint, you could again have another level of hierarchy below that at a customer location or a line level. Now that applies to, as I said, chemical or CPG or businesses where there is scope for keeping inventory as a strategic tool. But there could be made to order or assemble to order kind of businesses where you may not necessarily call your SKU or plan at a level that is the product that you send to the customer, but you may plan at sub-assembly levels or critical component levels. In that case, your hierarchies would look a little different, but the concept remains the same as to how you would aggregate them, how you would look at them at an overall level. Maybe you'll isolate a few critical assemblies and look at them differently, but it could also be organized into a similar framework that you see over here. For a quick summary of the overall SNOP process, as I said, this meeting or this webinar is not sufficient to actually give you an overall review of the process, but for a quick review, just to set the base right, you're looking at a 5-step process, the way that we orchestrate it. Start off with a post-period analysis, basically a post-mortem of what has happened, and then you go through a demand review process where you basically review your history, you review your performance, you try to identify why things went the way that they went. Do you need to adopt your history differently? Do you have new products to introduce? Those new products, what kind of a pattern would they follow? Is there a representative product or set of products that can be combined? Do you have any special customers that have given you a demand that can be adopted? And so on. So demand review, the objective of demand review is to come out with an unconstrained demand. The demand, if ever be constrained, it's constrained by not necessarily by supply forces, but by such constraints as how much of money you want to put on media or how much you want to put on sales. In short, I would put it this way, that whatever are the constraints of demand generation, those included, not considering the supply constraints, would be what your unconstrained demand coming out of demand review would be. You take that unconstrained demand coming out of demand review, run it through your supply process, evaluate that review, evaluate that unconstrained demand with respect to the inventory that's already there in the system and the capacities with respect to the bottlenecks that you have in your system, and try to see the feasibility of that unconstrained demand. If the unconstrained demand is good, you have sufficient capacities, you will want to check what the sufficient capacities are. Are you loaded 80%, 90%? Do you see any specific risk? Are there any lines that you need to release for any specific strategic reasons? Are there any engineering orders? Having considered all that, you would also check for overload. If there is an overload in such situations and your inventory is not sufficient to absorb that overload, you may want to go back and request for a change in the unconstrained plan that was provided. So all that happens as part of the supply review in terms of coming out with what risks that you see in supporting the unconstrained demand plan. In the process, you could derive a constraint plan, which is a more realistic sales plan that you can support from a supply perspective, and take it for a catch-ball, a kind of a negotiation with the sales folks. Is this something that you guys would be able to sell? Is this something that throws significant risk onto the from a profitability perspective? Is there something that we can do in terms of changing the mix of the product so that from a value perspective we get closer to what's expected, but from a volume perspective we can reduce it? All that catch-ball negotiation happens through the pre-SNOP process, and you might even come out with a couple of scenarios to support that demand from a supply perspective and a demand perspective. And once having done that, that goes into execute SNOP, where you can pick alternatives, or if you've already decided on alternatives, you get it signed off, and that would imply that the organization has signed off to invest on the plan that we have, has committed itself to the resource commitment that needs to execute this plan successfully. So that kind of completes the loop wherein you did an analysis of your past, you came out with a plan, you addressed the feasibility of that plan, tried to work through the risks, assessed the profitability, got back to the top management, said what we can do, what we can't do. If there is an additional investment required, please approve. If there's no additional investment required, they still need to sign off on this plan. And once they sign off on the plan, you complete the loop from where you started off from an analysis perspective, and you committed the organizational resources to a given plan that can be hit by all the executional and the tactical levels. And you of course would have an SNOP scorecard, which would be the best way to evaluate this process as you go forward. When you have an SNOP process, you obviously need to have an SNOP calendar. I would not talk too much about it. It just says what you would do at different points of the month to actually run a successful process that I showed you in this slide. That's the previous slide. If you want to go through a detailed SNOP workshop, we could walk you through every steps that are involved in this calendar, what tools that you need to do at every step along this way. Metrics, of course, unless you measure where you're heading and how you're heading and try to look for the gaps, you wouldn't know if you're really performing. So metrics are very critical. Metrics are also the best way of resolving cross-functional issues and trying to align various pieces of the supply chain together. So here is a list of SNOP metrics as examples. Some you might already be using. They're standard industry metrics, and some you may want to implement. But these are typically the metrics that can be discussed through an SNOP process to align your processes together and to prove performance and to track performance all along the way. What we always insist is that when you talk about metrics, it helps if you have a connectivity between the metrics as to how a given metric is worth it, as in how a given metric is linked to the metrics upstream and downstream. For example, if I pick master production scheduling accuracy, why is it important? How does master production scheduling accuracy impact profitability? If master production scheduling accuracy impacts inventory deployment because you already set your inventory deployment plans, you're committed to transport resources, and for the successful or clean execution of those plans, you need mass production scheduling accuracy. That's one way of drawing a link or a dependency between them. And of course, when you look at an organization, there are different set of people doing inventory deployment and a different set of people doing mass production scheduling accuracy. So if you have measures that are local measures and they don't necessarily have a correlation or a link to the various levels of supply chain, over a period of time, the measures get reduced to reporting processes, and they fall off the cliff, and they never talked about again. But if you can draw a link, then they get actively used, and you could use the results of those metrics for gap analysis and coming out with action plans, corrective measures, process improvement. So let's walk through this chain. You have master production scheduling accuracy that obviously impacts the way that you commit to your inventory deployment and transport resources. And by the way, that might be impacting, if you're in a CPG kind of business, something like line fill rates. If your inventory deployment is inaccurate, as in if you send wrong inventory to the wrong location, or you send your transportation is not reliable, it would obviously affect the way that you fill lines in an order, and that could mean that your line fill rates are affected. If your line fill rates are affected, obviously your perfect orders are affected. If your line fill and perfect orders are affected, your customers are not happy, and that could ultimately impact your profitability. But by the way, if your forecast accuracy is bad, you would obviously place inventory at the wrong locations, and your line fill rate could get affected. So all these measures have to be linked in some form for them to make sense to be discussed within a process such as SNOP process. And all these measures should obviously be aligned across the teams, and they should be educated or coached on how they impact each other. And when somebody delivers a 90% master scheduling accuracy, from a correlation perspective, how could it affect your line fill rates, and so on. We could actually have a whole separate workshop entirely on measures. I just wanted to indicate a little bit of the importance and the need for metrics to actually run an efficient SNOP process. I keep moving, but feel free to ask for details on the scorecard. This is a standard score, a standard set of measures, be it Oliver White measures or SCR measures, but we have adopted it from our experiences in the supply chain domain from a close-off perspective, but they're not different from the industry standard measures. Benefits of a well-run SNOP process, obviously improve teamwork across various functional groups, improve the execution because you're trying to execute upon what's approved, what's agreed upon, what's being committed. Better communication because you're all working towards the same set of numbers. Better utilization of key resources and assets. Better control on the overall business performance. It's not just getting business performance. The key word here is control. We perform real well, but we can't explain why we perform so well. You bet you'll not be able to explain why you perform so bad when you perform bad. So that control is important when you're working, especially at a tactical level. You should know why you performed well. You should know why you did not perform well. That's when you can draw a line and balance it out. One set of numbers across the organization, and all that leads to improved customer service, reduced inventory, optimized costs, successful promotions, and successful product launches. I could list many more, but I just wanted to set the stage, give a perspective as to how an SNOP process can deliver. Based on the nature of your business, based on the industry, we could come out with additional set of benefits, or the extent to which you might get impacted on each of these bullet points can vary. Keep moving on what's the key to success of an SNOP process. Obviously, there should be a good level of alignment across the organization towards making it successful. That comes through the leadership commitment and the leadership seeing true value on empowering this process and making it happen. Again, the whole organizational readiness part of SNOP process can be addressed as a focused workshop, and we'll be more than happy to do that if you're interested. We'll be able to set the organizational objectives, organizational focus, what kind of roles and responsibilities are required, what kind of org structure is required, who needs to do what, who needs to own up what. We'll be able to lay that out as a workshop if that's of interest to you. Again, SNOP process is not a systems implementation. It's not about flex planning, definitely not about HANA, not about APO, not about SCM, not about any of it. It's a journey. You could use any tools you want. You could build a custom tool if that suits you, but what makes it successful is the process itself, how you learn through the process, how you learn to adapt through the process, how you learn to work through the issues that the process throws up as supply chain improvement areas and work through them diligently and improve the process as you go. So it's a journey. You've got to start somewhere. ProSoft would be more than happy to be your partner in this journey and coach you through every step of this process. Now I would like to talk onto the flexible planning, which I guess is the point of interest of this specific discussion. I'm slowly getting into flexible planning and understand the technical or the tool part of it, how flexible planning is a good start. It's not too bad. We're obviously not competing with APO or for that matter HANA, but we're saying that without a significant amount of incremental dollars, definitely $0 on software commitments, how you can get started, how you can get moving, how you can start working on the process with a fairly good tool and stabilize upon a process that would be ready for taking on better, more exciting tools. So it's an ideal kicker, I would put it that way, from my experience. And let's see how you take it. The highlights are, if I try to sell flex planning to you across APO, HANA, and for that matter, third-party tools like Kinaxis or SteelWedge, I've worked across all of them, you don't, obviously no incremental software license costs if you're already on SAP, because flex planning is deep inside SAP. You can't take it off. You have it that you can use. It does have an APO footprint, so do a design that you'll be able to migrate to APO. So before they thought of APO, they built a good part of that concept of having planning layouts, having planning tables, working with key figures, working with various characteristics, having a multi-level hierarchy for planning, doing a bunch of interactive planning tasks, running mass processing jobs, all that you see in APO with respect to planning books, data views, planning layouts, mass processing jobs, what you can do with planning using macros, all that already exists in flex planning. APO, put in a crude way, is basically flex planning on steroids, and it obviously is technically way superior. It's got interesting, better looking layouts. I would probably not say best, but yeah, it's got much better looking layouts. So APO was built, and while it was built, it did borrow a good part of its design, starting off from flex planning. Flex planning sits on top of LIS info structures. Crudely put, APO demand planning sits on top of info structures. S&P sits on top of time series objects on live cache. If you crudely put time series objects on live cache and the cubes that you have in DP, should kind of mimic what flex planning would do on infrastructure. So I'm trying to oversimplify it, but I hope you get the message that a lot can be done in flexible planning based on the scale of business that you're looking at and the organization size that you're looking at. So it will help you to migrate with APO. I would say with ease, but it depends on where you are. It's highly configurable. Imagine that you need, and build it. Whatever you need, you can build it with a combination of configuration and ABAP. If you go to extremes, of course, you need to touch ABAP. But you can accomplish quite a bit by using the standard features. On the low side, obviously it's not APO. You can obviously, the number of people who can access an infrastructure is limited simultaneously. Not from a reporting standpoint, but from an edit standpoint. You got to watch out for performance if the size of the data is too big. Okay, you got to watch out the overhead that it might have in terms of data maintenance. And obviously, there are ways to think about optimizing that data maintenance tasks by coming out with data maintenance views and such. There are limitations with respect to how big a hierarchy that you can have. Obviously, you don't have things such as navigational attributes that you would have in a DC or a BI-like structure. So you have such limitations. But the level of hierarchies that flexible planning supports should be sufficient for a lot of businesses. So it could look better if you look at it and you work with it for some time. You would say that, hey, I would want it to look a little better. You obviously don't have graphics. So there are some graphics, but you may not be entirely satisfied with it. There are limitations with respect to alert monitoring. But you know what? If we implement event management and we set up event management with a little bit of a help from ABAP here and there, you could get it. You could get it there. So those are some of the highs and lows of the solution. Looking at the overall SNOP flow with an ECC, this is overall high-level architecture that we tend to promote. It doesn't have to be exactly this way, but pretty much it covers most of the needs. As you can see, there's a sales process, the sales history of the sales transactions. You capture the history. You do demand planning. Pass that information to supply planning. You might have a separate interface for getting field sales data. That could be a mini CRM system. You could get it through there. You do your supply planning, get it validated back and forth with demand planning. To take it to SCOPA, do your profitability analysis. You might do additional analytics with BI or LIS. Once you're good with all that, transfer it to demand management. If you need to do additional what ifs and you need to do detailed level what ifs, you could actually take it to long-term planning and do those tactical what ifs over there. If not, you're good with it, you could take it forward and start execution. Do your firm plan orders, do detailed capacity leveling, come out with line schedules. If you want to use a third-party tool, you could stick it up there. All that could again help you drive your ATP process and then take it forward onto execution at a detailed level. So that's a high-level overview of how the process would flow end to end. You could have various levels of planning. Typically, it helps if you limit your flex planning model to a 5-level hierarchy that you see at the bottom. I tried to capture a lot of information on this slide. Sean would be more than happy to send it to you, but I kind of use this as a design guideline when I work with the flex planning model. So moving further, this part of the discussion is obviously focused on those pieces, demand planning and supply planning from a flex planning standpoint. The rest of it goes to ECC. So this is where it is. So for demand planning, I've created a layout. You could have multiple layouts based on roles and the folks that you have in the process as an organization. I've created an exhaustive layout that obviously applies to the demand planner that I'll walk you through. And I've got another layout which is for a supply planner. I hope you bear with me that with the fact that I don't have very intelligent data. I have some silly data over there which we would walk through. But I would be more than happy, if you're interested, to take your data and load your data through my model and create a very customized demo for yourself and your organization if you think that there is a larger audience that sees this specific demo to be beneficial from their perspective. So at this moment, I kind of kept it very minimal because we also have a time limit. So I have very simple but very exhaustive views for demand planner and supply planner. You could add additional views for, say, let us say, sales managers, area managers. You could have specialized display-only kind of views. You could add views for plant schedulers and so on. So that's basically what I would show you going forward. Obviously, I'm looking at a 5-level hierarchy from a demand planning perspective and a 3-level hierarchy from a supply planning perspective. So is there something to be excited about? I'm not so sure, but I'll try my best. Can I implement a multi-level hierarchy? You know, some of these questions should get addressed. Should the number of levels at various levels be synced up? All these questions are addressed by flex planning. If these are the questions that you have in your mind, we obviously have answers for them. Can I get all or most of my key figures? You could. How about calculations? We can write macros to support your calculation. There could be some standard macros, and if those are not supported, we could write ABAP macros. Different views customized for various roles. Yes, we could create planning types like planning books and APO, which support various roles. Can there be events like can I estimate promotions? Yes, of course you can. Can I have alerts? The answer is no, but there can always be a yes based on how far you want to go. We can implement event management and build alerts and maybe do a little bit of ABAP and get it closer to your expectations. Not all of this is demonstratable within the few minutes that we have, but I'll try my best. Planning hierarchies, the model that I'm going to show you has this 5-level planning hierarchy. Family, subfamily, material, plan, shift to. So you can manage your numbers at a shift to kind of a detail. At the same time, you can aggregate them and play with the numbers at a couple of levels above the material or SKU or whatever you may want to call. You could use the subfamily and family as placeholders within your organization. You might find a different aggregation level. You want to call it a material group or whatever you may want to call it. We can customize it. But for now, I have these 5 levels. From a supply planning standpoint, I've got a 3-level hierarchy, which is basically material, where it's manufactured, and if I want to group those into a certain supply family. You could do your RCCP at a supply family level, or you could do it at a material plant level. So whichever level you want to define your high-level capacities based on what your business is, based on how you want to do aggregate planning. Or you could have different levels of RCCP based on different roles. All that Sean, can you see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes, we
I
can
see it. There's some lag. Yeah, now we.
Yeah, there
okay.
was some network issue. Okay. You can have mass processing jobs, so there could be planning tasks, planning calculations that you want to run on a routine basis. You want to move data between demand planning and supply planning structures. You want to move it to COPA. You want to move it to demand management for master scheduling. We could set up mass processing jobs so that those could happen automatically at scheduled hours. And then to drive them, you would have copy profiles, transfer profiles. A lot of these would come pre-configured if you were to work with us for this specific solution. You also have a few candidate ABAPs that you can readily use, and those could be customized to your specific requirement. You come with a fair level of documentation with respect to what type of org structure is ideal to support this model. What are the critical success factors? Where are the risks? What you should watch out for? We bring in our experience. We'll also get in process templates. Say you wanted to document your demand planning process. We'd come out with a ready process template. You could take the process template, compare that with your existing process, see what delta changes you need to make to your existing process. Or if you think you're doing a good job with your existing process, we could make a change to our process template and you could use it. So you'll get a head start in your documentation too. I would move on to the demo. I hope you do have notes on the questions that you have. I'm sorry I had to run through it pretty fast. I've probably blabbered quite a bit, but I would be more than happy to address your specific situation if you have the interest and if you think that we can help. I'll kind of switch to SAP quickly. This is for the demo. And after this demo, we'll walk through a roadmap. Sean, how are we doing on time?
We have 13 minutes left.
Okay, good. I'll show you a little bit about, I try not to use transaction codes because we as consultants are kind of addicted to them. You will also get a process-specific menu that can be built for this SNOP process. I'm sorry, I don't have it there, but if there be the interest, we can show that to you. We can build an SNOP process-specific menu. I'll kind of walk you through quickly the master data process. The flex planning model is driven by a planning hierarchy. It's obviously a multi-level hierarchy. I'll show you a demand planning hierarchy, which kind of has to mimic the model that I just showed you for family, subfamily, material, plant, shift to kind of a structure. And this is basically how it looks. It's not all that bad based on what we expect out of ECC. We really don't give it much of a credit. But as you can see, you can visualize a 5-level hierarchy. You got the infrastructure on the top. You got this family, as you can see, CH-GRP-A, that's the SNOP family. Below that, you got a SNOP subfamily, that's subgroup 01, and then you can see a material, and you got a plant and a few shift tools below that. So you can plan at various levels of this hierarchy. If you want to plan at the shift to level, you could put numbers at the shift to level. Typically, you may want to gather your market intelligence with a field force based on, of course, the industry that you're on. You could gather data intelligence for specific shift tools. If you thought that you had more value for a sold to versus a shipped to or any other business partner, we can customize that to your requirement. But I hope you get the message that you can gather sales intelligence at that lowest shift to level. You can aggregate that to a certain distribution location or a manufacturing location, that onto the material and onto the aggregate levels. If you felt that it made sense for you to do statistical forecasting at a subfamily level, you could do that. If you thought it made sense for you to do your budgeting at a family level, you could do that. So you could do various key figures at various levels. Like, for example, you could do your budgeting at a family level, blow it down to the bottommost level of the hierarchy. You could do your sales force intelligence or get the field intelligence at the lowest level. ship to, sold to, customer group, whatever you may want to put it, get that and aggregate that and compare that versus the budget. You could do all that stuff. So I've created a typical 5-level hierarchy that you can visualize using this tool for viewing the planning hierarchy. And as you can see, few transactions on top of that under planning hierarchy are the transactions to maintain your planning hierarchy. We could also create automatic utilities wherein you have your planning hierarchy built on a spreadsheet, and you could just load that, something like this. This is my demand planning hierarchy, and you could maintain the demand planning hierarchy on a spreadsheet and click a button to load it into SAP or to correct the existing planning hierarchy in SAP. Sean, can you see my Excel spreadsheet? I just want to check with you if the transitions are in sync or it's too much of a deal.
Yeah, I see the spreadsheet.
Okay, so I'm flipping back and forth the demand planning hierarchy and supply planning hierarchy on a spreadsheet. It could be as simple as this, and from this you could create the graphic that we just saw. All that is part of the solution that we've already built that you can take advantage of. If you wanted additional flexible product groups, you could group those product groups from the materials and build whatever analysis that you want to do. Then you have an automatic way of generating planning hierarchy. So these are all the master data utilities that you have within flexible planning that you can leverage. Now getting into a little bit of the layout, which probably is of interest to a lot of you. I'll show you the demand planning layout. I apologize, the data is not perfect. I probably could have done a better job, but as I said, we'd be more than happy if you are interested to take your data and run through the plumbing that we already have and give you a show and tell on how it looks like. And then if you want to make incremental adjustments as you see the data to the model, we're game for it. So this is the demand planning table, and you could open this demand planning table at any level of hierarchy. You could open it. You could open it wide across all hierarchies without mentioning any specifics. In which case, it'll pull up the whole database. But based on the volume of data you may want to restrict, based on the role that you may want to exist. There are a few limitations in ECC on how far you can go, but we already have ABAPs built in to kind of control the performance part of it, and we can share those with you. But for the kicks, at this moment, I'll open the whole as it exists because this is a demo client, and hopefully I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not. So to just give you a look and feel of how it looks like, I opened it whole across on the top so that I could give you a little bit of a feel with respect to drill down. You can also drill down in flexible planning. Drill down in SAP is such a remote word compared to what you may be used to in BI or any other third-party analytic tools. But you know what? There is a little bit of a help over here, not too bad. So as you can see at the topmost level, you don't see any specifics on those blank fields because right on top, everything together, right? So let me take one of the key figures. Let us say statistical forecast. You see those numbers based on my last statistical forecasting run over here. I'll walk you through that statistical forecasting process real fast, but I will. I want to show you a little bit of drill down. I want to take the statistical forecasting key figure and see how it walks across various levels, as in going down to an SNOP family, subfamily, material plan, shift. Can I go to all the way to that level? Let's see what happens, okay? So I take this, and I want to drill down this key figure, so click upon this button, the magnifying glass with a plus on it. Now it shows me the details at Group A and Group B level. But you know what? The fun thing is that if I change this, it drills down automatically, right? So you can see the numbers changing, right? So you can see that. So maybe I need to add one more zero to make sense of it, right? So it disaggregates automatically. So what I'm saying is that it syncs up up and down rather seamlessly. So if I make this say 600,000, it aggregates automatically. So that's the strength of flexible planning versus standard SOP that you have in SOP in SAP, that what typically people refer to as SO76, product group based planning. That doesn't. You have to run a separate macro to do that. But in consistent planning, using flexible planning, that sync up and sync down happens automatically. So you can see that it syncs up and down automatically. Now you can drill down further, right? I mean, you can take this and you can drill down further. Right? It takes you to this. It takes you to the next level. You can see the hierarchy on the side as to how far has it gone. It's gone to the subgroup level within the given family. Now you take this, and drill down further. Right? It takes you to the material level. And in that case, in some cases, if that's the only material and plan that you have, it shows you also the plan. But let's go to this. This probably has a couple of plans under it. Right? So if you go and drill down on this, okay, so it goes down further, and then you can also go down further on it to a sold to level or a shift to level. So it can take you all the way up and down. Now, if you want to go through the details on this, you can get back all the key figures, and you can see these key figures. Now, let's say you wanted to do a statistical forecast, right? And you go here, do a statistical forecast. It gives you this, do the forecasting, right? Let's say we choose a seasonal trend model. It pulls this up. It gives you all these numbers based on the history that we have. I've got about 24 months of history. It pulls up these numbers, and you can do that. It copies the forecast here automatically. As you can see this layout, you got budget numbers, you got task cycle numbers. What did I plan in my last cycle? I obviously don't have numbers over here, but you could have numbers from your past SNOP cycle. You got a statistical forecast. You got an initial forecast. You can run a macro where you can say that copy my statistical forecast to my initial forecast. You can do that. It copies automatically. You can copy a field estimate, right? I mean, just for the sake of a start, you can choose a macro, and you can start off with a demand planner override. You can do that, right? So look at all the key figures. They are very SNOP friendly. You can have initial estimate, sales field estimate coming in from your CRM system. You can have a demand planner override. You can make this 70,000, right? So you can do that, and then you can say that let this be my unconstrained forecast that I want to pass, for supply planning with an RCCP. You can do that. So that becomes an unconstrained demand that you get. So basically, look and feel. I just showed you how the numbers sync up and down the hierarchy, how you can navigate up and down the hierarchy. You can play and plan with these numbers at any level of hierarchy. You can do statistical forecasting. You can have your calculations and macros built in to copy from one key figure to another key figure, and so on. In the interest of time, I would quickly move on to supply planning. Again, the intent of supply planning is to show you a little bit of how you could do planning. The layout that you see in supply planning over here is obviously focused on doing production planning with target inventories and such. But if your process saw the reason to do so, which is if you wanted to do master production scheduling, we can create another layout which is similar to this layout to do master production scheduling. I'll show you through. Sean, I think we are running out of time. Could we request for a 10-minute extension? Is that okay?
Yes. Yes, Ramesh.
Okay.
Any questions? Meanwhile, please feel free to type the questions on the question tab, and we'll answer them.
Okay. Thanks. So as you can see, this is a similar layout as demand planning, but it's got a little bit more. I'm just creating a fictitious sales plan. Let us say, you have this sales plan. you can derive your production plan just like you do it on a spreadsheet from this sales plan. So let's say you got a sales plan and you set up a target inventory for this, a target inventory kind of an objective. So if you did that, you would have macros based on your target inventory to derive your production plan. So let us say we do this and we say, hey, get the production based on target inventory levels, right? So it gets you the production based on target inventory levels. It kind of pulls it up. You would also have on-hand inventory that you don't show over here, but we could customize it for you to get that on-hand inventory. So it derived a production plan for you. For some reason, if you want to modify the sales plan to arrive at a more doable production, you can edit it right over here and derive the production plan again by running macros. Now here we ran a macro where we are trying to derive your production plan to sync up to a target inventory. You could have a different logic. You could set up days supply, let us say 30 days of supply, and you try to derive your production based on 30 days of supply or 45 days of supply. You can derive your production that way. So all that could get built up into macros. If you have a different business rule and you want to run a heuristic, you could build that heuristic into an ABAP model and run that as a macro over here to get those numbers. Now, having done this, you got a production. If you want to do R2CP on this, we could check the capacity situation. And that capacity situation, based on the capacities that are defined, would come out with an evaluation. Obviously, this is just data. Bear with me. It may not make sense for you, but we could come out with what it makes sense based on specific data that you might have. As you can see, it opens up another grid that shows you the resource loading. And if you see, typically the capacity available is of the order of 800 to 900 hours, and you're significantly overloaded. So let us say we reduce this now, this production plan, we override it, let us say a 2, you would see the numbers changing automatically. If I can, so this is loaded to the extent of 133%. I've set in a load of only 100%. If it exceeds 100%, you can see that it's in a different color. Now, if I make it, let us say 800,000, it's not loaded, it's 88%. So you can see that in black. I'm not sure how you see that across the net on GoToMeeting, but typically this key figure will come out with a different color if you are exceeding 100% of the capacity. You could, of course, set up your work center to highlight it. If you set up an overload limit of 120, in that case, it will show you a different color only if it exceeds that number. So you could level this. Now, if you see, you will find that with that sales plan and with that production plan, you're obviously going negative. So you can't support that sales plan. You could either run a macro to adjust that sales plan automatically, or you could adjust that sales plan by yourself to arrive at a constrained sales plan. We are not changing the sales plan. We are not changing the sales plan that demand has provided us. We are only creating evaluation versions of this sales because you anyway have retained the unconstrained sales plan through these planning layout as a different set of key figures. Now, you can evaluate a couple of production plans and you back up those production plans into these key figures. Basically, you can derive more than one production plan, save them into these key figures, and evaluate them as separate scenarios. One production plan could mean that you're buying additional capacity, so you're able to support it, and this is how much it might cost you. Another production plan may be this way, that you actually go and reduce the sales plan and go for a discussion with sales where you say that, look, you gave me the sales plan as an unconstrained sales plan, but you know what? Period 4, I'm only able to do so much. I'm not going to be able to support any more sales than that. Now, how do we get to adjust your sales plan so that we can call it a constraint plan? Now, if an option for doing something like that exists within your process, we have the tool to help you analyze and come out with an appropriate proposal, right? Now I take 3 months, let us say, to increase my capacity, right? And if I can build that into an available capacity, I can probably take more production when I get there. So that's where you would see that we could build additional options for coming out with evaluating capacity, playing around with the demand plan, playing with the production plan. First coming out with a production plan that gets you to a target stock level, and then playing with what ifs where you change either a demand plan or a supply plan to accomplish what you're trying to derive as your supply plan. And once you align yourself with a set of numbers that are doable, for which you got the tools here, either in terms of RCCP or in terms of multiple key figures that you can do what ifs on, that you can save, and you can play the catch ball with various levels of the supply planning organization, with the demand organization as failed. You have the right tools for you to evaluate your plans and come out with feasible plans. So that is pretty much what I had to show on the demand planning and supply planning front. I think I would have crammed a lot of information, but yes, this was our first interaction, and I wanted to show you as much as I could and also cover a good part of the background. But please feel free to come back to us and ask for a more focused and relevant discussion from your standpoint. We'll be more than happy to take your data and load your data onto this model and show you how your business might look like in this. We could make a few additional adjustments and customization for your perspective without much effort. But if you wanted a very specific model, we are game for that too, and we can discuss how that can be accomplished. So I would thank you for your time, and feel free to shoot your questions to Sean, and we can move forward.
Thanks, Ramesh. That was indeed a very informative presentation and demo. We are now open for questions. Thanks, participants, for your patience in this extended session. You can type your questions on the questions tab. Ramesh, we have one question. Who are the users of S&op? Is it the top managers or operational users? And also, is the licensing cost included in the standard SAP?
What you just saw, flexible planning, this is a component within the existing ECC system. You don't need any additional software to be bought for this. The users would be, it would go all the way from top management to tactical managers, the way that I would put it. The level of detail that various levels use could be different, and we could create views that are suitable for that level. Typically, SNOP process is driven by the business general manager, whoever gets to take call in that business. You would have a demand planning manager who takes care and also owns up the forecast that is built. I would ideally like to call it a demand plan, because forecast kind of sounds non-committal. So he takes a set of numbers. So that demand planner is one pillar of the organization. The other pillar is the supply manager. And based on the size of the organization, these roles can mushroom into multiple roles, or they could mushroom into a larger organization with multiple subordinates, and so on. You could extend that organization all the way to master schedulers and material planners reporting into a supply planner. And the same thing on the sales side, area sales managers, field sales, working through the CRM system, providing the consensus forecast. We could actually have a workshop just on the SNOP organization and how we structure the organization, structure roles and responsibilities to make this process fruitful.
Sure. Thanks, Ramesh. How long would it take to implement this framework, typically?
As I would say, it again depends on the complexity and the scenario. What you see right now is kind of readily usable, if I put it in my words, with a rosy world, for chemical, CPG, make-to-stock kind of industry. For that kind of an industry, I have implemented this model anywhere between 3 months to 6 months kind of a time frame. The challenge is coaching the organization and getting it ready, not so much technically. But if it's a assemble to order, make to order kind of a process, you should probably budget anywhere between 6 to 8 months. I would put it aggressively, because their structures would be a little bit different. The way that you get history information, especially with variant configuration and such, could be a little different. So the extent of customization can mushroom. I would put it that way. I think you should target 6 months.
Okay, thank you. One more. Is this framework just for finished goods planning, or can it plan raw materials or assemblies too?
That again depends on the industry. So typically for FMCG, pharma, chemicals, the focus is on the finished goods, because when we go through this and we do a supply chain SNOP assessment, we also determine what's the right level for doing SNOP, what's the right level for doing master scheduling, and we try to orchestrate this process in such a way that we are able to make the right decisions at the right level. Different decisions are made at different levels. Nevertheless, they all need to be in sync. However, if you're trying to work in an assemble to order kind of a scenario, in that case, critical assemblies are the level that you should be doing your SNOP. And in some cases, you would also want to do them at a critical raw material level. For example, I used to plan for Procter & Gamble, I used to plan Head and Shoulders. And there are various points of time when for Head and Shoulders, the anti-dandruff active ingredient can be a bottle. In such cases, you definitely want to see active ingredient planning for that Head and Shoulders in your SNOP process. So there are ways to do that. So I hope I answered the question.
Sure. That's it for now, Ramesh. We have extended our session. I think there might be a few other questions, but we'll take it on an individual basis, one-on-one basis. And we thank everyone for joining this webinar, and we'll see you in our next webinars. Thank you, everyone, and thanks, Ramesh, for the presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.